finest galleries, let's say, in the city.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this public session of the Metrolinx board meeting of today. I would like, first of all, to express the regrets of our chair, Mr. Don Wright, who is unable to be here today. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian Davies, a board member, but I also serve as vice chair. So in Don's absence, I get the privilege of calling this meeting to order. I would like to start today's meeting with the land acknowledgement. And that is, let us take a moment to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, in particular, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We acknowledge that Metrolinx operates on these lands and has a responsibility to work with the original keepers of this territory and the many diverse Indigenous peoples living here today. Thank you. Today's agenda includes the tabling of our annual report and business plan and reports on our safety progress and priorities, our employee engagement, and initiatives to promote increased ridership. Before we get into these matters, I would acknowledge that the following correspondence has been distributed to the board. First, a correspondence from Mike Sullivan dated June 25th regarding recent fare changes for customers traveling between Weston Bloor and Union stations. Correspondence from Ken Bosfield dated June 26, 2019 regarding the use of the former CP lines in the Don Valley. And correspondence from Sharon Yetman dated June 25th regarding transit innovation. I would now like to turn over to, is Matthew here? Yes, he is. Matthew Grush for the acting principal chief planning officer, who will lead us in our safety briefing.
Thank you. So the safety briefing is both kind of a sign of the culture of safety, and for me, it's been also a bit of a behavior changing moment, and I think it has had a really good impact on the whole company and our own behaviors as in our life, in our everyday lives. So in an effort to ensure safety of everyone in the room, we'll review the safety briefing instructions. So we've designated some people to support in case of emergency. So in the event of an emergency, Jennifer Gray will be responsible for calling 911. Lena, where's Lena? Lena. He's there, he's behind. Lena will be responsible for escorting emergency services to the meeting room to make sure they access very quickly. And our designated first aider today will be Phil Verster. So the first aid kits, the automated defibrillator, and the fire extinguisher are in the kitchen just across the waiting room. They're in the hall outside of the boardroom. The emergency alarm starts with a slow ringing pulse, and then you just have to remain calm and await further instructions and get ready. And then if it speeds up, it gets louder, an emergency evacuation procedure will begin, and a voice will tell you what to do. So everyone is to leave the area, remain in a calm and orderly fashion, walking down the main staircase, which is just outside the boardroom, and exit the building onto Front Street, and going down the staircase as elevator service will be suspended. So then you have to cross Front Street and make your way to the designated assembly area, which is on the west side of the Royal York Hotel, which is so basically the northeast corner of the intersection between Front and York Streets. And there we will conduct a head count or check that the people that are here are all safely at that designated assembly area. So because of the number of people in attendance today, rather than doing the full head count, please look to your left and your right and make sure that your neighbors have made it to the designated assembly area. And it's an opportunity for you to meet your neighbor if you haven't met them already. So it's also a nice friendly moment. And so, so often after these safety briefings, we share a safety moment where this culture of safety has an impact on our own lives. And for me, it has changed the way that I look at things. So I was, with my family, we joined the Pride Parade on the weekends. And one of the things that I noticed, and I probably would not have noticed before, is there were a lot of people on scaffolds. So there was some construction on Yonge Street going on, and there were a lot of people that were climbing, and that made me quite worried about the number, because scaffolds are not designed to welcome so many people climbing. So they were all very festive, and it was all very, very nice. But that's something that I noticed immediately. And on some specific construction sites, I did notice there was some safety staff that had been asked by the construction company to be there specifically on that day to prevent people from climbing on their scaffold. So I know that, having seen this, I reacted by, I just kind of actively looked at these security staff and kind of acknowledged their presence and kind of gave them a deliberate thumbs up to say, this is really a positive initiative that you've taken. And they were there, they were watching the Pride Parade and just being careful about everyone's safety. And that's something, that's an analysis that I would probably not have done before joining Metrolinx for that safety culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. With the indulgence of the board, I would like to make a small change in the order of our agenda for this meeting. We were to have heard immediately from Phil with his CEO's report, but I would like to move forward the two items that require resolutions from the board, and that is the approval of our 2018-19 annual report and our business plan for next year, 2019-20. If everyone's comfortable with that, it just so happens that I, as chair of the Audit, Finance, and Risk Management Committee, also will be responsible for reporting on both of these, because that committee reviewed them in its meetings yesterday. And I'm joined at the table now by Jen Gray and Jamie Robinson. Jen will speak to both or address questions on both these topics. And maybe we'll start with the annual report.
Right.
The annual report is required under our Act, under Metrolinx Act. Our annual report requires board approval. And then once approved, the annual report is finalized and submitted to the Minister of Transportation for her review and approval as well.
Right.
Yesterday I mentioned the Audit and Finance Committee did review the draft, and subject to certain minor changes, recommends it for approval by this board. The material, I believe, was in all of our packages for today, but this is an opportunity to ask any questions of Jen on the content or any questions about the process. So, anyone?
Maybe I'd make one quick note for the
Sure.
small changes that we did make between Audit Committee and today, or we are recommending, is there were two references in the sustainability appendix with regard to assurance that was provided by PwC. That step actually hasn't been completed yet. I think we were just, in terms of timing of posting materials and where we're at with the assurance process with PwC. So those are the two statements that we are going to strike, because that step hasn't happened yet. And so we've had discussions with PwC, and they're comfortable with that being represented, being pulled out of these documents. If you have any other questions, I mean, your annual report is a key accountability document that is part of our suite of accountability documents that are given to the province, our review of what happened last year, as well as our financial statements.
And I can give some assurance that the Audit and Finance Committee did have a thorough discussion of it and was comfortable with its content, as were the external auditors. Yes, Janet.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jen, just to confirm, how do we distribute this and who all gets it? The annual report?
The annual report. So the process would be that we will submit officially to the Minister of Transportation. Yeah. The Minister of Transportation submits to the legislature. Once it goes to the legislature, it then gets approved, and then we officially post it on our website.
So we don't do anything other than sort of the official government channels and website, or do we?
So this year there was actually some changes to the agency accountability directive, of which one of the key changes was the way in which these would get distributed and the nature that they would exist. So the government would prefer that we didn't have glossy photos. This isn't about those kinds of things, and so it's a little more plain vanilla, and so there won't be a large to-do made about it, and so we would post once we hear back from the minister about it's being tabled in the legislature.
But we're not doing any special distribution to stakeholders?
No, and they also, we're not going to plan to print them. They're available online, which is more similar to the approach the province is taking. Minimal printing of their budgets, for example, minimal numbers of copies that are going to be available. So we won't be printing and distributing, just posting electronically.
Any other questions on the annual report? If not, there is a resolution in our books that just says that subject to comments, any further comments received from either this committee or from AFARM, and I think they're all in place now. The Metrolinx annual report for 2018-19 be approved, and that the CEO submit the annual report to the Minister of Transportation in accordance with the Metrolinx Act. The mover, Janet, thank you. Secretary Paul. Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, now, hang on, Jamie, we're going to do the business plan, and that's closer to you, isn't it? No? Oh, you get away? I get away on that, okay. On the business plan, this is our outline of priorities and projects for the coming year. I guess it's the year technically we're already just into.
We are, yes.
But for the 2019-20 year. And it's done in a form that reflects the requirements of the agencies and appointments directive of the government. But it reflects the transit priorities both of the government and the strategic priorities of Metrolinx. And for that reason, it is produced in collaboration with Ministry of Transportation staff, and they, working with Jen and her colleagues here at Metrolinx, have produced this business plan. It too was reviewed by the Audit and Finance and Risk Management Committee yesterday, and is in a position to be recommended by that committee to this full board. I believe the outline that you gave as to, it's more, I think you used the term plain vanilla format, not glossy paper. And I don't know if we'll be producing hard copies or just posting it electronically.
No, yeah.
But so it's going to follow that same format. And I would remind members that it does include our forecasts of expenditures for the coming year, plus in some cases our capital projects for 2 more years beyond that, for a 3-year period in total. And those are consistent with the numbers that we saw in the material that was presented at our last board meeting in May.
Right.
Anything that I've missed on that?
I would just clarify. So the operating side is 3 years and the capital side is 5.
Is 5.
And in any case, we usually would provide the most amount of detail for the first year of the plan, and then a little bit of detail in terms of the out years and what that looks like. And I would just add that it is, what we have here is compliant with the agency directive. And one nuance between the annual report and the business plan: the annual report is tabled with the legislature, the business plan is not. The business plan is given to the minister, and then they would, upon receiving and reviewing it, provide us with a letter back that says they're accepting of it. Again, their staff have been involved in reviewing the material, so we expect them to be comfortable with the content of the business plan. And once we have that approval letter back, we would then post it on our website. And you are correct, Chair, we would not be planning on producing publicized copies or distributing it widely, but we would post it on our website.
Great. Any questions of Jen on this matter?
Just,
Yes, Paul.
just one, I assume that as the legislation evolves with respect to Metrolinx, that all the compliance, both within the annual report and the business plan, would be in place?
Yes, they would. Compliance for those key documents are actually set out somewhere other than our legislation, but we do make sure that the two tie nicely together. One of the changes we made to the Metrolinx Act the province made to the Metrolinx Act in the fall was the alignment actually between the directive in terms of timelines of when we do things like budget planning and when we submit things. So absolutely they are aligned.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, again, the resolution is in our binders, and it's very similar to the other one, that the Metrolinx business plan be submitted to the minister, and in the event that the minister requires material amendments to the business plan, an amended business plan will be brought back to the board for further consideration. Again, if there's no further discussion, a mover and a seconder, all in favor? Thank you. Thanks, Jen. And now we'll revert to the proper order or the original order of the agenda, and that's over to Phil with his CEO's report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Since the board met last on May 15, a few historic events have happened. Probably the most important one is the fact that the Toronto Raptors won the 2019 NBA championship. And it vastly overshadows any other good news that we can have at this board meeting. However, we are also thrilled that we moved a record number of people on the day, about nearly 40 to 50% more people that we typically move, and the spirit in the city was fantastic. In terms of transit, something else took place over the last month that will also have a significant impact on the region. On May 30, we announced with Infrastructure Ontario the 4 international teams that have been shortlisted to bid on the GO Rail expansion program. We are right on the cusp of partnering with one of these international consortia in the next year and a half as the bids are completed to build regional rail services that will significantly change the region. And in this GO expansion project, we also announced that the Canada Infrastructure Bank will be a contributor through a subordinated debt, which to a tune of around $2 billion, which will have significant benefits for the program overall. The news about this program got significant uptake worldwide, and we had more than 6,000 views across the world. While this is a really important part for our future, I just want to focus all of our attention today on the improvements we're making to customers today already. In the last year, we've added 292 more weekly trips on GO. That's huge. We introduced a newer, lower GO base fare and also our Kids Go Free program. Our ridership has grown by 6% in the last year, including the Barrie line, which grew by 10.3%, and the Richmond Hill line that grew by 10.5% in terms of ridership. And you will hear from the team later this afternoon how we intend to keep up that momentum. 9 rail stations are now currently receiving significant upgrades to improve customer experiences and to improve the amenities that we have at these stations. And we are getting closer to having the double-track section on the Stover line completed. And twinning that line will change significantly what services we can offer on the Stover line. At this point, I also want to just acknowledge that today we've received 2 petitions from residents in Bolton and in the Bolton region about our suspension and reduction of bus services 38 and 38A. Late yesterday afternoon, we've decided, based on the fact that the town of Caledon was going to go to market to extend bus services through Caledon, that we would extend the services of bus route 38 till January 2020 to make sure that residents in that area have a service, an uninterrupted service, till the point when the service comes, the Caledon service comes into play. I spoke to the mayor of Caledon myself over the period of time, and at our Ask Metrolinx session on Monday evening, We listened very carefully to the communities, and what we have responded to shows that we listen, but that we also have to curtail our resources and apply our resources where we have the biggest demand. Now, the month of June has been very active for us. Our Indigenous Relations team led us through celebrating Indigenous History Month. This included announcements on our trains on Friday, June 21st, in recognition of National Indigenous Peoples Day. We also had 180 or so, I think it's closer to 200 myself, of our employees participate in Pride, the Toronto Pride Parade on Sunday, which was hugely enjoyable. The best part really being me shooting Leslie with a water gun in the face. I really enjoyed that. and I think Leslie enjoyed it as well. And it was a fantastic day. And the bus was made up, and we had a huge reception across the parade. Last Friday, I attended the opening of the ION LRT in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I think what was notable on the day, as the first LRT coming to the region, was that this board may recall that about 15 months ago, we took an important decision on how we were going to proceed with a commercial approach on the Bombardier contract and the Bombardier vehicles there at the LRT program was running in good form with good reliability, and that LRT would not have been completed had we not taken the decisions we took at the time. Just think that reflects the impact of the type of decisions that this organization makes. We remain committed through Ask Metrolinx, which we held up in Vaughan on Monday. We remain committed to our approach to transparency, listening to communities and being out there in the community. And I've got to say, every time we have now done 3 of these Ask Metrolinx events out in the region, we dovetail it with meetings with MPPs, councillors, as well as chambers of commerce out there. And I think it's hugely positive that, and we are being told it's hugely positive by these stakeholders who we meet at these occasions. And as we normally do at a board meeting, we have a session for recognition. And I'd like to spend a few moments to recognize just 2 particular groups. Firstly, everyone knows how important safety is to us as an organization. And when our employees uphold or do things that are important for safety, we recognize them. It's even more special when we have people from the public that maintain a safety vigilance for our behalf. And today I'd like to commend Carly Moore. Carly is with us. Carly, would you mind coming forward, please? And I would ask Vice Chairman Brian Davies to present the letter of recognition to Carly. Now, I'd like to explain what happened here. One of our creeds are to, when you see something, say something. And Carly noticed people on the rail tracks, on the Kitchener corridor recently, on the track, and I saw the photos myself, people standing on the track taking photos of other people that are on the platform, which just keeps on being a surprise what people come up with. Carly captured this unsafe behavior on video and immediately shared the video with Metrolinx officials. Luckily, no one was injured, and when we identified the people involved, these people were quick to take responsibility and hopefully would learn from their experience. Carly, we thank you for being a safety champion. Thank you very much. And I also want to recognize amazing team effort by several and different departments here at Metrolinx for the work they did during last week's unprecedented celebration of the Raptors in downtown Toronto. We were all witnesses to the historic parade that took over the streets, and the demand on our services broke records. The ridership increase was huge, and nearly 75% increase on the normal service on the Up Express. And then those numbers don't include the thousands of Kids Go Free passengers that really availed on the day. Our staff rose to the occasion. While our trains were filled, our stations were packed, those who worked behind the scenes kept people moving safely. Dozens of our staff members volunteered at Union Station from other roles that they have, and many of whom were taking GO and helping people, of which many were taking GO Transit for the first time. A special thank you to all of those people and to all who helped to ensure customers' experience was smooth, easy, and memorable. I now invite Brian, our Vice Chair, to head on to the agenda.
Thank you. Before I do that, I better make sure there are no questions of Phil from any board members. You're getting off lightly again, Phil. The next item on our agenda is the ridership initiatives item. And I believe that Ken and Sharon and Steve are coming up. Great.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I will assume this presentation has been read, so I just wanted to lean into some of the key highlights. They're going to allow me to drive, which is dangerous. So first of all, we'll top line just a few of the insights that we've learned from our data analytics and how that drives the rider campaigns that we put in place. I'll also, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to speak to some really cool assets that we have for some upcoming campaigns during the summer, and then we'll talk about some key events that we're really excited to be a partner with. So I'll just flip over to slide 4, and really what we have learned is that, as Phil has said, we have a 6% year-over-year growth, which is really exciting for us. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that have fed into that, but one of the key learnings that we have is, excuse me, an additional or incremental 900,000 boardings from events alone. So as part of our strategy this year, we really do want to double down on our investment in events, not only where we have partnerships, but also where we have opportunities to be in the consideration set for people when they want to get to these events, not only in the 416, but out of the city as well. So Kids Go Free, we had a short campaign when this launched back in March. What we learned is that people really loved the creative strategy behind this campaign. So we have expanded it. We have, through a sneak peek that you saw at lunchtime, we have leaned into some of our Presto partners, whether that's the ROM or the Aquarium, Legoland, Hockey Hall of Fame. So they'll all be part of the push through our integrated marketing campaign for the summer. The campaign is, we have some of our traditional channels, out of home, owned, print, obviously digital and social is huge. But what's really exciting for this year is a partnership that we have with CBC. You'll see in the top right-hand corner there, we have a map of our system. So this 3-month partnership will drive people to this map where they can click on any of our Go stations and learn about where they can take their family for a fun activity. So we have obviously the museums, we have our perks partners highlighted, but we also have other kind of fun, interesting things that families might be interested in. So we hope to get some learnings from this. We think this is actually something that we'd love to port over to our own site and expand and give people more reasons to go. In addition to the map itself, there will be sponsored content with like, here's some 6 great trails that you can take your family hiking on. And it will tell people where the local Go station is, how they get their first mile, last mile connection. Also, we will be partnering with social media influencers, so Instagram influencers. This is a new strategy for us. We've been doing quite a bit of work in that space for the last 9 months, and we have seen huge engagements, lots of reach and impressions. So we have 3 influencers that are parents. They live on a corridor, on 3 separate corridors across our system. And over the course of the summer, they will highlight kind of the fun things that they're doing with their family, whether it's with perks partners or not, and how they're using Go to get to where they need to go. So what we've learned in the 9 months that we've been working with influencers is that you actually get an 11 times the return on the investment. So for a very small investment with these influencers, we're getting a reach of almost 800,000 impressions, which is really fantastic. But also what we're learning in this new kind of digital age is that a brand is no longer what we tell consumers, it's what consumers tell each other. And 92% of consumers trust influencers. So that's really something that we want to expand on and grow, not only for Kids Go Free, but for all of our outreach activities. And we have this beautiful train wrap. I was on this train yesterday and I made sure I sat on that car. but I didn't get to appreciate it from the inside, unfortunately. So our next big campaign, so this is our big brand strategy launch for Go Transit. As you'll recall back in February when I shared with you the brand strategies for Go, the value proposition that we're leaning into for Go is that it's not just a way to get there, it's a way for you to make time. So as people are time crunched in their day, like where does Go sit in your consideration set, and how can we remind people that all of the things that you're missing out on? So Find Your Go Time is a campaign that will launch in mid-July. It is a traditional out of home and radio, obviously targeting all of those drivers, digital and social, and reminding people whether it's find your playtime, find your zen time, find your meme time, all of the things that you can do on the train that you can't do when you're driving. In the top right, there's an image of a super board. So these are digital billboards. I wanted to tell you about this one because I thought it was particularly cool, and so did our agency. There's 9 of these billboards across the 400 series. And we brought in our media vendor and the actual owner of the billboards, Astral, to think how could we really creatively use these billboards. We're restricted with bylaw, we can't use animation on these boards. So what our agency did was they wrote 200 copy lines, and every 15 minutes we will serve a new ad to these billboards, and the message will be day parted. So that means in the morning we might say, find your board prep time on the on the go. Like you could be board prepping, but you're driving. But in the afternoon, it might be leaning into like you could be napping, but you're driving. So if you're driving from Hamilton, for example, you will not see the same board over an 8-week period. There will be different messages rotated through, and depending on the day of the week or the time of the day, you'll get a different relevant message. So we're very excited about this campaign, and what we have is the opportunity to optimize, because it is a 9-month campaign. So through our digital and social messages that are performing better, we'll put more investment behind those, and we'll pull back on others, and we'll get a lot of learnings around what are the messages that are really resonating with people. And then in terms of improving customer experience, we just wanted to flag Uber's still maintaining its strength, so we're very excited about that partnership. Tim Hortons just recently reopened in Burlington, and they're seeing good growth, I'm understanding. And it's coming soon to Oshawa, so people love their coffee. They like their coffee on the go, so we're very excited to bring this product back to them. Lastly, there you'll note that we have mentioned e-ticketing, so we will be doing a technical pilot for an e-ticket, and that really just removes a barrier for people when they're trying to pre-plan or get to our stations and get a ticket. It's a complicated, in their opinion, it seems like a complicated process. And e-ticketing also gives us the opportunity when we're driving our Find Your Go Time or Kids Go Free messaging, that we actually can digitally convert people and get them right from that ad and send them somewhere where they can buy. Right now, we're sending them to a web page for information. So this is a really great tool for us in marketing, and we're looking forward to getting through the technical pilot and then developing a promotional and event opportunity calendar for the year.
Sharon, is the UP arrangement or partnership solely at the, the Uber relationship solely at the UP stations?
Yes, Chair, it is.
Any opportunities to expand that to other stations? I'm almost the end of terminus. I go out to Oshawa quite regularly, and there's always sometimes there's a lineup of cabs there, but oftentimes I have to wait.
We're looking at a variety of different opportunities and partnerships to solve that first and last mile, and we'll be back with a solution a little bit later.
Thank you. Destination-based travel. So we're very excited to partner once again with Niagara Parks and Muskoka to drive these destination-based travel to get people out of the city and to make that first mile, last mile connection a lot easier. Creatively, we're again leaning into this Find Your Go Time strategy. So you'll see, for example, there, find your perfect pairing time on the way to Niagara's wine country, and just reminding people of the things that they can do when they're not sitting behind the wheel on the QEW, very frustrated. So this will be running throughout the summer. It's already in my Facebook feed, and so we're very excited about these opportunities and to grow that service.
What's the Wago bus service? Is that
WeGo solves our
WeGo?
last mile solution. We get to Niagara Falls, so you can ride from all around the city of Niagara Falls and all the way out to Niagara on the Lake as part of your fee. So it makes it very easy. They meet the train when it comes in, and you can move throughout the system for no
all for $35?
for an individual, correct?
Very good.
Just two other things that I'd like to point out on this slide. So the creative that you see there, we've actually worked with our agency to create a template, and this template can be used in-house by our creative services team. So we can be super nimble and very cost efficient in terms of just grabbing copy and images and placing them in this this format, which helps us be faster and cheaper, which is fantastic. Additionally, this again leans into the trip purposes to get people out of the city for the weekend. So we'll be also talking to tourism partners who can open the doors for us with regional tourism offices and find these other opportunities. So and these will be again proof points to the success that we've had over the last few years. And in terms of our promotional partnerships, Steve and the team have actually doubled the partnerships that we had from last year, which is fantastic. We're very excited about some of them. As you can see, we have a Team Go Racing bus that will be going to the Honda Indy. Slowest vehicle at the Honda Indy, best way to get anywhere. We also have Go Bear will be there. He's actually got his own racing uniform. That is a massive, massive helmet that we had to get created for him. But an investment that we'll use every year at the Honda Indy. And there's many more prospects, as I understand it, in the pipeline. So from the brand perspective, we're very excited to just continue to drive awareness of our brand and be in the consideration set for these events. Lastly, Presto Perks discounts. We continue to offer these discounts. What's great about them is that we cross-promote them with the Go brand, with the Up brand. So from an advertising perspective, we get to be super integrated and cost-efficient and give people a reason to believe throughout our marketing initiatives. So I've talked a lot. Do you have any questions?
Any comments, questions? Janet?
Just the Niagara service, so the WeGo bus will pick you up at the GO station, and does it have like a regular route in various places?
Yes.
So if you were going down for a winery tour, how do you?
On the winery tour, there's a number of tour providers that work out of that area that you could hook up with them.
So they'd meet you at one of those
Correct.
stops potentially?
right.
Yes. And then there's a number along Niagara-on-the-Lake route that they go that you can get off and on.
Oh, even on the WeGo bus?
Yes. It's a regular municipal type transit service that they provide all the way to Niagara-on-the-Lake. So I believe it stops at ones like Peller Estates and Wayne Gretzky's.
Oh, very good.
That is very good.
Janet's going to book her ticket.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was that easy.
And that's it. It's a lot about just removing barriers and making it just not mindless for people, but they don't need to think about the planning.
And you can drink more wine.
That's right. Not on the train right now, I'm afraid.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Very, very informative. Next up is George Bell. I saw George a moment ago. There he is. On safety strategic priorities, and it's already been mentioned that we take safety as a very high priority here. And
It is indeed.
over to you, George.
Thank you very much. I was expected to be joined by Martin Gallagher, but I guess Martin has been held up, so he may show up as we go. Martin is a really key addition to our team. Some of you met him yesterday. Martin came to us from Network Rail, where he oversaw safety for the entire Network Rail outfit for about 10 years. He also serves on a United Nations Safety Committee, particularly looking at level crossings. So the expertise that Martin is bringing us is really going to raise our game, particularly in construction safety, which we'll address in a moment.
For those who don't know, Network Rail is a very large UK
Apologies, yes, yeah.
service.
Thank you. So we are committed. There's no doubt about the commitment of this organization to safety. You can see that out of our strategic objectives, fully two are safety related. I'll talk to those in a little more detail. As well, we've adopted a safety charter, and the majority of our employees have actually signed up to live the promises that are in this charter. Big difference here is that these promises are individual related. It's the individual who promises to support safety, not just at Metrolinx, but in their life. And we had an interesting example of that given to us yesterday, in which one of our young engineers had a birthday party for her 7-year-old, at which she conducted a safety briefing. Not your run-of-the-mill moment. here are a few of the points that we'd like to cover. Safety's always been our top priority, but we're really renewing our focus. In the past, we kind of believed we were safe because we were safe because we were safe. But we've become much more metrics focused, much more KPI focused, much more driven. And as we talk later about safety culture, we've actually, we measure that, and we'll come back to it. But one of my, and apologies to Phil, one of my informal measures of safety culture within the organization is the ratio of the number of people who say, I'm safe because Phil wants me to be safe, to the number of people who say, I'm safe because I want to be safe. The more people we have saying the latter, the better our safety culture. And we're really, really moving in that direction. We have employee injuries as one of our key metrics. And we measure those as the number of employees who lose a day of work to injury beyond the day of injury. So if I hurt myself today and I take an hour off and come back tomorrow, that is not a lost time injury. That's a legislated definition. But if I lose any time at all, past the day of injury, we record that very vigorously and we manage those. And I'll speak to our targets and our progress on that in a moment. We have targets around railway rule violations. These are high-risk incidents for all railways. Happy to say that we outperform most railways in our numbers, but they're not good enough. Even one is too many, and I'll return to that in a moment. We've integrated construction safety into our general safety framework. This is a big move for Metrolinx. And in fact, we've been given a very ambitious task by Phil. Our mandate is to improve construction safety in Ontario, not just at Metrolinx. So we're working with the industry at large to improve a very big segment of our workforce in the province. We're focused on building our safety culture, as I said. We'll talk about some systemic improvements there. And we're really looking at the safety of our operation. And what we talk about here, as you'll see again in a moment, is we talk about everyone home safe every day. And by everyone, we literally mean everyone. That's employees. Welcome, Martin. That's our employees, our customers, our stakeholders. And we really push that hard, that it's everyone that we're interested in. One of the early challenges I got was stop talking about employee injuries. Start talking about injuries to people, harm to people. And that's a major shift in the way we think organizationally and the way we treat our safety. Sorry, this is Martin. We're actually a little ahead of schedule, so Martin's not. But I'll ask you to introduce yourself, please, to the board.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Martin Gallagher. I joined Metrolinx 12 weeks ago. My background is in safety and risk, and spent a long time in the UK with Network Rail. I was head of safety nationally for Network Rail for the best part of 10 years, and I've also worked at the UN and chaired a UN safety committee for rail since 2013.
It's a powerful CV Martin is bringing us. So I'll move on to talk a little bit about the numbers. So I explained a little bit about how we calculate our lost time injury frequency. This is a backwards-looking metric, so it tells us what has happened. But it's really important to us because it gives us an indication of how strongly we're managing our risks, our safety risks. When you look at the numbers here, you'll see on the red line, our current result on a 12-month rolling average is 4. And that's calculated per 200,000 hours worked. So what it is a proxy for the percentage of employees who become injured on the job. So about 4% overall of Metrolinx employees are injured. The target we had set for last year was 2.8, and we failed to meet that. It was a very aggressive target. It was a 33% reduction. We were able to get some significant gains, but not meet our overall target. We had a 13% improvement last year, and we're focusing on a 20% improvement for the year to come. The numbers here are largely driven by our bus division. And when you think about the type of work that bus drivers do, we have to be even more aggressive in managing their safety risks. These are people who spend 10 hours a day in a chair. And are then asked to load luggage or to assist passengers. So there is a lot of opportunity for injury there. I've canvassed the major bus providers. I've talked to TransLink in BC and Ottawa, and we're about on par with their injury ratio. Ours is about 9. And it's not good enough. There is going to be a tremendous focus on driving that number down this year. Some other divisions, safety and security, we had an excellent question on that yesterday. We drove our injury frequency down by 23% last year. The majority of injuries in that area are incurred when our staff make arrests and people resist. So that's a very difficult number to manage. Excuse me. When we look to the other side of the chart, we talk about train operating rule violations. There's a document called the CROR that dictates how we operate our railway. And we look at rail operating rule violations very closely. If you are an inch past a red signal, it's a rule violation. If you speed more than 10 miles an hour, it's a rule violation. So we have all these built in. And just for context here, the number we are posting so far is 1 per million kilometers. So that's 1 rule violation in 154 coast-to-coast journeys in Canada. It's quite a respectable result. We're working on safety culture, as I said. We started off pretty much at the bottom of the chart, where we're safe because the rules say we need to be safe. And we've worked very hard on getting people invested in their own safety and the safety of others. We've done one more survey since then, and we're at the blue star now. We've moved up the chart quite considerably. Our goal is to be excellent in safety culture. We're going up to the top right of that chart, where that's really what we do all the time. And one of our mantras, along with everyone home safe every day, is that we live and breathe safety and security. And in fact, with the efforts we're putting in, we're actually getting there. One example of how we do this are these 3 pictures. So we have our executive on the top. In the center, we have a group of 20 of our largest construction contractors who are also committed to making sure that we live this mantra. And finally, in the bottom is our Safety Leadership Council. We have 100 of our employees at all levels of the business who contribute to our safety efforts, help direct what we do, and help us get the results that we need. We need a commitment from the top. We equally need it from the bottom in order to succeed. I'm just going to go quickly here. We have drastically revised our safety orientation training. We have additional legal responsibilities to new and young workers. So we're making sure that they are safe from the beginning and that they are fully briefed on how we intend to do safety and what their obligations and rights are around that. When we did our original safety survey, we found that we were getting good safety discussions. On the other hand, we weren't having as good training as we needed. We have 70% of our staff who are now reporting safety concerns. That is low. One would expect 100% to be able to do that, but we have some trust issues to overcome. We're doing these things through our new safety observation program. We have enhanced safety training. Our systems are good in place. Our staff is doing frequent walks, and you can see the rest of the list there. These are all things that we're attacking very vigorously. Some indicators of our success. You can see the numbers here. Very few companies can boast that more than 1/3 of their employees are first aid trained. These are numbers that we're driving hard. These are good results for us, and we're going to use these to take us to the next level. I'm going to turn this over now to, perhaps if you'd like, Chair, I can answer questions, or we can turn to construction safety.
Can I just ask on the first aid training, what's
Yes.
involved in that?
There are 2 types of first aid training. They're both mandated under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. First is a 1-day emergency first aid training that would let you respond to minor injuries. It includes CPR and the use of AEDs. The second one is more involved. It's 2 days and allows you to handle more significant bleeding, deal with some bone breaks and other things until emergency responders can arrive.
Any questions before we move on to construction safety? None? Okay. Very good. Go on.
Martin.
Thanks, George. So, I mean, we're in a slightly different position in terms of maturity with construction safety or capital project safety. A slightly different position than the wider safety and security and operational safety in the business. what I did when I first arrived was look at how we're managing construction safety and the competence levels and our technical capability, and realise that there were some areas where we could improve. And so the focus really was on improving organisational capability, the technical competence of our staff to be able to identify risk, to be able to manage risk, because we have a very good LTI in construction safety. Our target is 0.1. We currently sit at 0.16, which is very good and comparable to anywhere else in the world.
Can you translate that for us? LTI is long-term,
Injury frequency,
and 1.6 is 1.6 out of?
0.16.
0.16 rather.
200,000 hours.
Yeah. So that
It's
is
a very impressive stat. What it doesn't tell you is the level of risk or the level of uncontrolled risk. So we have a very good LTI, but what we see in our inspections and audits is that we have lots of uncontrolled risk, and that's evidenced in incidents and the number of corrective actions that we take and the number of investigations that we undertake. So we have a good LTI and we have a good performance against LTI, but we also have some work to do in terms of managing risk, identifying risk, controlling risk, both on our side, but on the contractor side as well, who also struggle sometimes to identify and to manage risk. And we see that evidence in risk assessments, we see it evidence in accident investigations where perhaps they haven't identified the correct root causes. So part of what I wanted to do was to address some of these issues, some of these capability issues, both on our internal side with our construction safety officers, but also with our contractors. So we've trained a lot of staff, and we're training a lot of staff over the summer. We've got 42 different training courses running that started back on early June in risk management and hazard identification, and that's the basis really for improving our own competence levels. We're sending these people out to sites where they're doing a great job. We've standardised inspections, audits, reporting, and we've put in some additional governance steps and another layer of safety assurance. So, for example, last week around incidents investigations, we had approved the establishment from the ISHI committee, which is chaired by Phil or by Greg Percy normally. We had approved the establishment of an incident and accident investigation recommendation review board, which will allow us corporately across the business to track investigations, to track recommendations, and to ensure that they're implemented, or the reasons why they're rejected are recorded as well. So just adding that additional governance step in. And we've done that with other committees as well. The establishment of, on May the 10th, we held the first SHELT committee, which is a leadership team for the industry, which is chaired again by Phil or by the Chief Capital Officer, Matt Clark. And so we're doing a lot of work around engagement, driving safety culture in our business, but also with our contractors, but also around governance and capability as well.
There's one thing that has been brought to the attention of the audit committee, and that is that we also have criteria now in our procurement policy to expect our contractors to meet certain recognized standards.
We do, and that's part of the evaluation process now. So safety is now, I believe, a more important, I say I believe because a more important part of the evaluation process, a more significant part. So you may be the second best on price, but if you're the best on safety, there's a good chance that you'll win the contract. What we still have to address, I think, is the subcontractors, how the subcontractors perform in terms of not only their safety performance, but how we deal with that in our contracts as well, because often we see the general contractors, their performance, they may have a very good LTI in safety performance, but some of our subcontractors that they use, perhaps that's a gap that, you know, that we're talking about 5 or 6 layers down of subcontractors. So what's their safety performance like? That's an area that we can certainly address. Sorry.
I'll open it to questions to Martin. Yes, Luigi.
So with the objective of trying to improve safety, not only in our organization, but construction safety in the province,
yes,
what tactics are you going to be using other than our own contracts? Like, for example, working with the industry associations or trying to get safety into, Construct Canada, which is like an industry trade show, sort of. What strategies are you thinking of using?
So we already have various industry meetings where we've got a number of high-risk activities on the agenda there. Well, myself or George chair of the constructors meeting, which is more of an operational level where we identify certain risk areas that we want the group and the industry to focus on. So that's one tactical example. The higher level leadership team meeting obviously is another tactical example. But improving contractor competence, putting in systems and processes that will help us to validate and verify their competence as well on site. So, for example, in the UK, we use a Sentinel scheme, which is basically a database with a card system that tells you when somebody arrives at site, what their credentials are, who they are, whether they should be there to work or not, and whether they're competent to work. And it seems like a very low-level tactical intervention, but it's critical in terms of who turns up to site and whether they should be there. Occasionally at site we find out that people aren't actually competent to be there. So just kind of lower level tactical measures like that as well, on top of everything else that we're doing, will help to raise the general standard of safety performance.
A little more, a couple of things that we can add to that. The Ontario General Contractors Association is the biggest construction association. We sit on their safety committee. We meet with them every 2 months, and we have them fully engaged in helping us with our efforts. The SHELT that Martin referred to is a CEO level committee. So these are the CEOs of these construction companies. They meet with us every couple of months, and that is to drive that strategy across the organization. We're also deeply involved with the Industry Health and Safety Association, who are the core certificate of recognition certifying body for construction in Ontario. We work with them very closely. We have instituted a requirement for all our major construction contractors to be core certified, so we know coming in that they're already very invested in safety. And as Martin mentioned earlier, when we look at bid evaluations, 20% of that evaluation is based on their safety performance. It's industry leading.
And of course, the enhanced safety assurance and governance steps that we're putting in now are not just to benefit us now in the way that we manage our safety performance, but in terms of our responsibilities around Encore and Project Co, that corporate safety oversight is going to be very useful in terms of discharging those responsibilities.
Yes, John.
Yeah, what's, when you look at where you want to go with this in terms of safety and whatever, what do you think the biggest barrier is going to be? What's sort of keeping you up at night on this file, either one of you or both of you?
Actually, for me, it's the level of effort that's required of the business is extreme. While we're in a very busy time, we're increasing our service, we're increasing our scope, increasing our reach. We're also asking people to be extremely conscious of doing things safely. It doesn't keep me up at night, but it does require a lot of organizational effort. I think that we're turning the corner. I think that we are now in the adoption phase, and I think we're going to see some really fast progress. Rail risks keep us all up at night. They're inherent in the business. We work very hard to control them, but they're nonetheless real.
For me, it's managing the demand for productivity and access, which we can improve, with the level of competence of subcontractors.
Great. Any other questions? If not, thank you both.
Thank you.
Presentation.
Keep the good work.
Our next item is employee engagement. Helen. You're going to take the lead on this, Helen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And so good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having us here to speak about engaging our people. And I think that you're familiar with Annalise and myself, so I'm just going to ask my colleagues to the right and left of me to introduce themselves as well.
Hello, I'm Sandra Porches. I am the Director of Engagement and Inclusion.
Hello, everyone. Jason Lee, Manager of Employment Engagement and Culture.
And so we are here to discuss engaging our employees. And this is, I thought, a great photo for us to start off with, because I think it really represents the heart of our organization. It's the frontline people who really get things done. And those are really our employees that we have top of mind when we're talking about engaging our people. And so we want to just give you a brief overview of our leadership actions that we've put in place, how we've tied that to pay for performance, as well as our continuous dialogue overall. Now, I think you just saw this strategic wheel again just a few minutes ago, and one of the strategic objectives that we have, of course, is engaging our people. And we really recognize that having engaged people is crucial to our ability to really successfully deliver on our major commitments. And our focus is how we're able to enable that passion and dedication and align with our values and create the environment where everybody can be successful. And, it's interesting, we, of course, have engagement surveys. And in our last survey, there was 3 themes that came up, and frankly, they were not unfamiliar themes to us. And probably for those of you that have done this in your organizations, themes that you've seen pop up as well. And our employees told us really 3 major things. One is they really want to see leadership. They want to have that visibility to leadership. They want to have communication, and not just one-way communication, but two-way communication. And they want to know what's going on. They want to know what changes are coming, what the future is of the organization, and what that means for them as well. And so, to address these, we actually put 5 leadership actions in place, really fundamental management practices, because we recognized that these 5 leadership actions were not being completed across the organization in a consistent manner. And so this was really a way for us to formalize this throughout the organization. And so Sandra is going to speak a little bit more in depth around those leadership actions and how we tie them to performance.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. Helen's absolutely right, of course. If you do all of these 5 things as a leader, you're fairly ensured, I think, success. The thing I enjoy most about these actions is it's going beyond good intentions. It's really about behavioral change. Extraordinarily performing teams are the ultimate advantage, as we know, of any company. And so if you want that, people have to be led well. So really, all employees are accountable to driving employee engagement. But the best part of this plan, in my view, is it involves both management and non-management employees. So the responsibility is not on one side. So really, the team came up with, I think after a lot of work, 5 leadership actions. These are the mechanisms to drive employee engagement. And I will really briefly walk you through them. You have them there in front of you. But again, none of this is a happy accident. If you're leading people well, you're doing these things absolutely consistently, and they become part of your day. So the 5 that we selected were monthly one-on-one meetings with direct reports. Obviously, that's a great chance to sit down, give feedback, coaching, and it's really rapport building. Employees feel very seen and heard. The second, monthly coffee chats. Just to be clear, this isn't heading out to Tim Hortons, although some people do want to meet over a coffee. But it's a chance to encourage employees to ask questions, to learn more about the team, the division, the organization, and to share their perspective. The best part I have found of this particular action is it gives people a chance to dispel rumors. If people think Metrolinx is doing this, you can say, no, let me course correct that right away. That's actually not it. It's this. Because as you know, in the absence of information, sometimes people invent information. And monthly walking the floor, again, this is hugely powerful. If you're walking around and get out of your office and start stopping at desks and having conversations with people, you're going to hear things you wouldn't hear otherwise. Number 4, the weekly leadership business meetings. These are very powerful. I've attended several, and it's a way for people to have the messages from SMT cascading down to them. You know, we've all said to bosses, what's happening? And when your boss says, nah, same old, that's not exactly inspiring. So it's really beneficial to hear what's happening to the leadership above you and what's going on. The last one's a quarterly town hall. Again, these are happening very frequently in my own department with HR. I think we have 4 a year now. And this is a fantastic opportunity to all be in the same place at the same time, hearing the same messages. We're sharing, we're learning, recognition of an employee who's done something amazing. People are learning in real time, and as you know, development's a key driver of engagement. So the thing I like best about these is it's sharing and it's learning, and hard to believe, it's even fun, because most town halls now include an element of fun. So that's the 5 leadership actions we selected.
Just on the 5, I was
Yep.
sort of surprised that walking the floor is sort of monthly. I would have thought that would have been like daily.
Yeah, well, that would be the bare minimum. To be honest with you, you know, really where we're starting is getting people comfortable with the idea of walking the floor. And I hate to say it, but if you're an introvert and walking the floor is tough for you, starting with monthly, you know, get out there and don't be afraid of the employees. Go out and talk to them. And we all do have those times where, you know, you're walking the floor and you're wondering, you know, should I stop and talk to you? But in my experience, even recently, every time I do this, someone will tell me something I just didn't know about the organization. So yeah, to your point, monthly, but obviously the more comfortable people get, it just becomes the habit, and that's what we want. We're trying to change behavior. Any other questions, sorry, on that slide before I gallop ahead? Okay, conscious of not taking too much time. So the last slide here about how we action and build accountability. There's really 3 things, you know, and I love the idea that what gets measured gets done. A big fan of that. So there's 3 things that have been launched. One's the Leadership Actions Divisional Showcase, aligning employee effort to organizational success, and connecting leadership actions to pay for performance. So I won't dwell on these too long because I know you know about pay for performance. But really what we're trying to do is to have people understanding in multiple ways how important engagement is and how it drives performance. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the idea of the Leadership Action Showcase before passing back to Helen. I was part of the panel which actually was comprised of Phil, myself, and Helen, we might say a jury of their peers. And each division came in and presented in an actual showcase. I found it incredibly powerful because people told us, here's how I've interpreted this. And we were able to say, oh, wait a minute, that's not exactly what we were thinking. But at the same time, we also heard some brilliant ideas that we can then share with our colleagues across the organization. I picked up a couple of really great tricks, which I am now going to steal. So that went really well. And then what happens is each team that presented will get a report card and a score. So I think it was a really great way of bringing leadership actions to life. It's not just a document. You came in and told us what you did and what the result was. Any questions around that?
And Annalise is actually going to speak a little bit about her leadership actions and how they're being lived and breathed in Presto.
Yeah, so obviously, as the board members know, we've been through quite a huge transformation at Presto over the past year, which unsurprisingly has led to a lot of questions, as you know, as Sandra mentioned, a lot of misinformation within the organization, and also, quite frankly, discomfort with some of the changes that we've made. And so well before the leadership actions kind of started being discussed in a more formal way, I've been focusing on this with my team for quite some time. And the slide here shows a couple of the things. I'll highlight some of from the 5 leadership actions specifically, but some of the extra things we've been doing. So we've had actually town halls at Presto long since I took this chair, but making them quarterly and also making sure that they're focused on planning, make sure they're focused on a balance of team building and so on. So you'll see this is a photo from our most recent one, the top 2 pictures there. We did some team building with the team, particularly important now because we've gone through this big change. We also talked about the goals for the year and so on, and all, most importantly, and what I love the most is we use this kind of interactive tool called Slido, and we allow the staff to ask questions through, kind of for a full hour at the end. And I got just a plethora of questions. Some of them have to do with culture, some of them have to do with our specific plans and so on. Some of the extra things we've done, I make myself available once a month for a instant messaging time for the staff to be able to ask questions that they wouldn't want to ask in an open forum. This, though, I do know who's asking me the questions, and again, I get anything from what about my job and my specific manager, and we give advice. Often I pass them to HR if they have questions on the mechanics of how things work, to, what are you doing for your weekend? But it's really nice because it's a way of people engaging, and as Sandra mentioned, you have, in particular in areas like in Presto, where you have corporate cultures that grew up with more introverted types like in IT, sometimes folks don't want to be in a big room raising their hands, and so different ways to engage is particularly important. The final two things I just mentioned quickly is we do, again, all hands calls once a month, which the last call, we have about 200 staff at Presto. Last call we had a week ago, 161 phone lines logged in, and we know for a fact that many of them were in the room together. So we think almost every single staff member is listening, which is amazing. And we do a monthly newsletter where we celebrate success. We do a poll every month with respect to questions and kind of surveys and so on. But we also give updates on actual strategic performance, how we're doing on our KPIs. Every month we report to the staff, and also we report on a deep dive of one of the projects or one of the groups that are working on something interesting. It's been a lot of work, and I think what to support Helen and Sandra and Jason. This can't be done off the side of your desk. It has to actually be planned and it has to be worked on. I have, a couple of great team members who are great at writing, so that makes the newsletter snappy because I wouldn't write it so nicely. But it actually, you have to spend the time, block off the time to walk the floors, not just because it's natural, but because you have to make sure you're not, it hasn't gone by for 6 months and you've forgotten and gotten caught up with meetings and so on. So it's been hugely beneficial, but I think we're now at a phase where we're making sure it's not just me and my direct reports, but actually kind of the middle layers of management that we're supporting so that they can behave in these same ways. And for those who are less comfortable, encourage them and help them in terms of being more accessible, but also having the right types of conversations, whether it's planning or supporting their staff and career growth and so on.
I wanted to be able to provide a little overview of how we've been actioning the HR leadership actions within human resources as well. And frankly, human resources, we were actually a bit of a pilot for these leadership actions because we found about a year ago we were suffering what I would call a bit of the shoemaker's children syndrome, in that we weren't really taking the time to follow our own strategies and our own advice. And so we had to take a little bit of that for ourselves and action these leadership actions. And what was really key for us was to have the commitment of all the managers within human resources to make this a top priority. And we were able to do that. And I have to tell you, that has been core to our success. Without that, these actions become very rote and a checklist and do not come across as authentic. So that was really step one for us, and very key. As Annalise was saying, this takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of focus, and it takes a lot of planning, and something that has to be part of your regular cadence from a leadership perspective. And so in keeping the theme of two-way communication, we ask employees what would they like to see at the town halls. We do a lot of recognition, we do career panels, and when it comes to their one-on-ones, the agenda is actually based on what they bring forward in their agenda, what do they need to talk about, and it also includes their development and coaching, as well as personal. Everyone always has something that they want to share, and that goes both ways as well. So those are just some highlights that I wanted to share. And as the pilot, I'm really pleased to say that we've seen about a 5% increase in our employee engagement scores as a result of this dedication and the two-way communication and openness. So, the proof is definitely in the pudding. And so just to bring us home and wrap us up, I'm going to ask Jason just to talk a little bit about continuous discussions and dialogues.
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking about employee engagement, when we're looking at it from a Metrolinx standpoint, from a future state, what does engagement look like? One thing that we kind of talked about, when we're seeing our organization evolve and change constantly, we are trying to make sure that our approach to employee engagement evolves from an agile perspective. Are we ensuring that we're providing the right content, feedback, data, insights, both from an employee perspective, but also from a usefulness perspective for our enterprise? So when you see that table in front of you, those 3 bullet points on the left, flexibility, frequency, and relevance, those are kind of the benefits of this continuous dialogue, and I'll explain what continuous dialogue means. So in industry, continuous dialogue in terms of employee engagement means increased frequency in which we're asking employees for sentiment and feedback to help inform our organizational actions. From a Metrolinx perspective, we took into consideration recognizing that we've been doing surveys for quite some time now, since 2012, annual surveys, and we only recently, last year, launched our first biannual pulse survey that provided us a benchmark or a base for the development of those leadership actions. So how do we ensure an opportunity now to ensure that the data that we're providing is relevant, both from a timing perspective? So if we're doing an annual survey and we're asking for employee sentiment and leadership actions to work on that, how can we provide that type of insight to enable our leaders to conduct their leadership actions and drive engagement? And also when we're talking about relevancy, do we have the flexibility to ask specific groups, demographics, population segments that will help us at the end of the day not only just drive engagement, but also improve the employee experience? So that's kind of where we're at today, and hopefully at the end of the day it's helped for us to better understand and better inform our actions going forward.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Questions to any of the team? Yeah.
Is there any anecdotal feedback from employees in terms of how this is going, in terms of your anticipation of where it's at?
Unless you probably have some kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's, so I think it's an interesting time right now because when you formalize something, there can be skepticism that it's a checkbox exercise and that it's not authentic. And so I think we have lots of enthusiasm that leadership cares enough to want to put time and effort in. That's acknowledged. I think that there's always a kind of bell curve of sentiment in an organization. You have skeptics who think that it's not genuine. I think, though, the vast majority do see that making sure that their leader, be it their direct manager or so on, is actually setting aside the time for them, ensuring they're having the right conversations, definitely is recognized and is acknowledged as both important for them to do their jobs, but also recognizing their own importance in the organization. I've personally had anecdotes where just I tend to eat lunch sitting with the staff, I always have, and I often get nuggets of information on how things are going that I would never hear in a meeting because people are chatting, or they ask me offline, I heard this, but is this really what you meant? And so we clarify 100 times over in a 5-minute conversation over a sandwich than we would if we were in a meeting. So I think, naturally everybody sees it going. And my only personal feeling is culture takes a long time to change. And so we have to be patient, that we take the 5 actions seriously, and that we don't feel like the change is not happening fast enough and therefore change our tactics. Because the tactics are good, they're solid, and so we just need to stick with it.
I'll give a practical example. I mean, in HR, Ellen, about 18 months ago, we had a combination of factors that caused a pretty intense environment, and we had poor employee engagement scores. Some of the actions here, Helen put in place and implemented relentlessly. And in the last survey, HR was one of the highest scoring employee engagement teams. And I think that's just the recognition that the basics work. And just a second observation, listening to how it's done in the different divisions across the organization brought it very starkly out that while it's fairly obvious what the 5 leadership actions are, the implementation and the quality of implementation varied significantly. So what we're doing with this session, HR and Presto were the 2 top performing teams in terms of how they were implementing these. We're setting sort of a best practice example, and we'll be cascading it through the rest of the organization to make this very real and not just a bureaucratic exercise.
Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now for quarterly reports. Annalise, you get to stay.
I assume it's red, so any questions? I could give a little top line, but normally we.
I think you can assume it's red. Why don't we work on that basis and there's nothing crazy that's happened since May?
Fabulous success, I think, is, no, I mean, we're tracking well. The big highlight, I'd say, is that the tickets deployment on the TTC is now well underway in terms of growth as opposed to piloting. So as of a few days ago, we've sold 74,000 of these limited use tickets. Just over half of them are one ride, but they're also being sold in 2 ride and 1 day passes. Through the next several weeks, we'll be fully complete in terms of sales at all TTC stations, and by the end of the summer at every Shoppers Drug Mart in Toronto. And likewise, the remainder of the key flagship projects for the TTC are well underway. We've got lots to do. I think that really what we're focusing now is completing those projects, which are kind of the last of the old system and the legacy of the way we've been doing things over the past several years. And we're very much turning our attention to modernizing the payment experience, improving the customer experience with respect to reducing the 24-hour load, introducing new forms of payment like mobile payment and credit and debit payment. So we're working very hard through the summer to ensure that we have tangible plans with specific dates on them, and that we get the transit agency stakeholders, where necessary, where they have involvement, to agree to those plans and ensure that we can deliver on them.
Great. Well, we all look forward to that.
And at least just, you were very graceful on Metro Morning
Thank you.
a month and a half ago. Just wondering, progress on that front? Has there been progress in that relationship with that particular partner?
Yeah, so Phil and I have been meeting with the CEO and Deputy CEO of the TTC, and we have plans through July to continue commercial conversations. I'd say we also have been having conversations about ensuring that the public discourse is balanced in the way that board reports and any answers to media are done, because really we are working well as partners, and it's a shame when the public or politicians in the case of the council members, are led to believe that this isn't so. I think with respect to large, complex programs like what Presto represents for the TTC, I mean, I said it to one of the reporters, this is the largest single change for the TTC since the launch of the subway 51 years ago, in terms of the change to the customer experience, the significant change to their operations, and so on. And I think it's, that's hard work, and we are all doing great hard work together. Sometimes that hard work takes longer than everybody would want, and so it's a shame that sometimes that's projected as different.
And we've more formally shared that view with the chair of the TTC, Jay Robinson, in the last week. And we'll circulate that correspondence to members of the board.
Thank you for your good work.
Thank you. Good.
Other questions on Presto? Then we're on to ops. Operations, great. Is there anything you wanted to highlight? Again, you can assume we've read the report, which thank you for that, but is there anything you just wanted to highlight?
So I think the focus for my team for the last period was obviously safety. George reported very comprehensively on that, so I won't repeat that. It's being able to add the level of service, both bus and rail, is not easy work. There's a lot of effort that's going into that. I think that the game changer there is raising the customer voice to an equal footing to technical preparation. So we have a process that has increasingly and robustly balanced both of those out. And I think that's worked quite well. It needs more rigor, but it's got very good momentum. And we have more service launching this weekend, but a significant amount of service coming this September. And there's a lot of work to get ready to do that properly. So that's a very good process. That's about OTP. So on-time performance is, we picked it up, but it's elusive. It can slip very quickly if you don't keep your head in the game. And the team is doing that very collectively, and that too is a fair amount of effort to do. But head down, moving forward. That's kind of what our focus is.
Okay. Any questions of Greg? Hopefully good weather will help on time performance too.
Yeah, well, we don't depend on good weather.
Okay.
That's a bonus. It's hard work.
Thanks. Planning, Matthew?
So for planning, maybe just a couple of things. First, I think there's the business case guidance that was published at the end of April. That's a really good, that really establishes a very good baseline for understanding and evaluating the project. So from a methodology standpoint, that was very important. I think there was a big effort also on designing kind of a connectivity metric for station access to be able to anticipate all the future needs, all the different choices and the options that have to be given in the future to enable the kind of ridership growth that will happen as service increases. And so being able to measure that and understand what are the barriers to station access, that's a big piece of work that was done over the last 6 months and kind of concluded recently, and that really drives our actions forward in facilitating station access. And then maybe just a call on the work that's been done by the design team on universal design standards. So it's been informed also with a transit accessibility survey that's been feeding back into these standards, but I think that's also a really good step forward to understand all the benefits we can get from that universal design approach to just facilitate and provide a better customer experience for a lot of different customers and not only those that have mobility challenges.
Great. Questions of Matthew? Then we'll take Matt. This is Matthew. Matt.
Okay, so I guess running through the different areas of CPG delivery at the moment, I think as our presentation at the last board meeting showed, we're on site with a huge amount of work at the moment. From a Go expansion point of view, we're in contract with 6 out of the 10 large P3 AFP contracts, and we're on site with 4 of those 6 and rapidly moving towards site on the other 2. So that's very positive. Our other early works in the Go expansion portfolio are also showing significant progress, particularly at places like Bloomington Station and Bramalea Station. And of course, from a Go expansion point of view, we're progressing well with the request for proposals and the tender process for the big package 3, the Encore package. From a rapid transit point of view, just a huge amount of work happening at Eglinton. Currently still driving hard towards our September 2021 completion date. Works particularly at Eglinton Station are currently critical and need a lot of focus to make sure we do achieve that date, but the team are working hard towards that. We're working towards closure of the RFP process for the Huron-Ontario rapid transit as well. And from a core team perspective, we've had several sessions with the team to look at how we're structured, both from an organisational structure and a communication point of view, but also a real process, nuts and bolts type project management plan delivery point of view to understand how we're going to absorb and ensure we're ready to absorb the additional workload associated with the subways portfolio. So from a performance point of view, I think we talked about that earlier. So.
Yeah. On Eglinton Crosstown, you say hope to be September 21. You're a betting man. How confident are you?
So driving towards, did I use the word hope? I definitely misspoke if I used the word hope. Eglinton's a real challenge. Eglinton's a real challenge. If we look at the current productivities at Eglinton against what they need to achieve, then we've got our work cut out there. But we're working with the contractor, with Project Co currently, to look at a recovery schedule. We're reviewing that recovery schedule with them now, and we're working collaboratively with them to hit the date. So we haven't moved the date.
So what's the causing that? I mean, is it just the project is more complex? Is it they haven't managed a couple of things they should have, or is it just the natural things that happen on major construction sites? Or?
There's a bit of things that happen on major construction. So if you dig right into the causes that we were looking at in April, there was a lot of wet weather. Yeah. There was right down to the fact that some of the sites where we take our material following excavation were closed, and we weren't getting the trucks on the road to move material out of an excavation, and those sort of things impact. The schedule, we've seen compression of the schedule, and we've seen erosion of float over the last 6 months, and that's why we're putting a real focus into that recovery schedule with the contractor at the moment.
It's fair to say that the biggest cause has been the excavation digging out soil, digging out the station boxes, especially at Eglinton and Young.
Yeah, Eglinton's been mainly trying to get it away, hasn't it? Getting the spoil material off-site and to a disposal site has given us a bit
There's a
of a problem.
period after winter when there's a half-load strategy as well, where we can't move full loads of excavation.
Because of road damage?
Road damage. And so it's just a question of moving soil. But it was always a challenging program, and it's all hands on deck.
Well, I think the neighborhood up there is going to have a Raptors-type celebration when you guys cut the ribbon on this one.
Okay.
Any questions for Matt? None? Okay, thank you. Jamie, we have your report. Anything you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, just thanks for the opportunity. Just a few things. So lots of communications, lots of engagement going on. Some of the things that we're able to do is we did a Doors Open event in Whitby with the maintenance storage facility there, and then as well at the Crosstown in Eglinton. Really, really successful. So we're really exposing the tremendous progress that we're working in the facilities to the public. In total, we had somewhat over 5,000 people that attended those events, and so that's fantastic. It's great. In advance of a lot of that work, we do media tours, and so we did some very successful media tours at the maintenance storage facility, and then at Eglinton Station, and really, really positive coverage as well. We also use the opportunity, again, using Eglinton as an example, where we do get a significant number of complaints from neighbors in terms of the construction noise and vibrations and things. We actually use the opportunity to take some of our community liaison committees down into the tunnels and down into the sites so that they can really see, that they can understand really what we're building underneath the ground that's impacting them on the surface. And so that really tends to take a lot of the wind out of their sails and helps create a more positive relationship with the local community. So all that's good. The final one I'd maybe highlight is the Metrolinx blog that we've got. We've rebranded that to Metrolinx News. And so we continue to generate our own stories and tell them in our own words and get that out there, because we realize that's the best way. And so our numbers continue to grow rapidly every week, every month, in terms of the number of views of those stories, the really positive engagement we're getting that is really terrific. And so we're finding the whole organization is submitting real unique and new stories to help Metrolinx tell its story.
And where do we find those? How would I?
We'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Great.
Yes, Janet.
Just, there's been some stories lately in the Star about TTC seems to be quite cranky about Presto and continues to be quite cranky, and there's been some stuff in there that just, at least my understanding, was just not accurate information.
Yep.
How are we dealing with that? I mean, we don't want to get into a public bun fight, but at the same time, I think readers deserve to know what is and is not really going on.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a significant issue with Annalise and Phil and corporate communications really working hard to get that out there. So really challenging when there are facts that and misstatements. I think that it was pointed earlier on. I think that Annalise did a fantastic interview on Metro Morning and the like, and that was a difficult, challenging interview with Jay Robinson having led off, and I think that Matt Galloway was particularly aggressive with Annalise, but I think that she performed admirably, and I think that we really work hard on this, and I think that we've got some looking ahead, and there are some positive stories coming up for Presto in some of their applications over the course of the next number of months, and I think we're going to work to get some of those positive stories out there that really reframe the narrative that's out there. Yep.
I asked Jamie and Mark and I are going to work with the new vendors and actually build a more comprehensive stakeholder and public messaging strategy that's less reactive, more us guiding the story, and actually, to Jamie's point, driving what's being talked about in the public realm. Because you've been very, very reactive for quite a long time, and it's not helping our customers actually.
And it's causing people in Toronto to make decisions based on perceptions of things that are not accurate, right? So.
Yeah, so we're going to work through the next couple of months and get something.
Oh, that's good. Okay, good.
Good.
Any other questions?
Just before Jamie, just want to thank on behalf of the board, Jamie, for standing in on the SMT and for the fantastic service you've given us over the last couple of months. Thank you very much. It was great work.
My pleasure. Thanks again for the opportunity. Great.
And last but not least in our report updates is marketing. Mark?
Thank you, Board Chair and team. Just wanted to kind of I think as you've heard from some of the presentations in the public session and earlier this morning, just to reassure you that we are absolutely sort of building team energy and momentum with a clear focus on creating demand, providing new reasons to think about transit, to think about Go and Up Express and Presto as a first choice. So along with that comes obviously a commitment from our team to kind of work and deliver exciting plans, but also to ensure we have a little bit of fun at the same time. So if we take a quick look at the last couple of weeks with just a week ago with the Raptors celebration and Pride just this last weekend, engaging our customers in fresh ways that sort of has everyone think about transit and think about Go Transit specifically. We are committed, of course, to also continue to build accountability for non-fare sales generation with a really robust plan and committed to working plans as we need to course correct. So, more events, more partnerships, more communication on the horizon, but great energy and a great team building.
Good.
Thank you.
And your report spoke well, so.
I want to see shots of the Super Soaker gun fight.
Not to be reenacted.
So Janet, we'll invite you to join us for Pride next year in 2020, and we'll arm you up.
I wasn't able to be there. Was this inside a bus or outside?
Outside.
So a big part of the celebration, of course, is having a lot of fun, but also thinking about what Pride represents, and I think we did that in spades. And the water super soakers is a great way, particularly on such a hot day, to have a bit of fun. But the 200 or so team members that walked with us, families and allies, was just incredible.
Great. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. That brings an end to our public session today. So thank you for attending, and we will take a break for a few minutes, but I don't